What up, A-Push homeboys and homegirls? Today we're going to take a look at the period 1790 to 1860, and in particular, the market revolution, the rise of a national economy. If you're looking at the A-Push textbooks, these are the ones that this lecture lines up with. So let's get started. What the heck is this market revolution that you need to know about? One is regional specialization. The different sections of the country are further developing into distinct economies. The North is going through an industrial revolution, the rise of factories and the mills. The West is continuing to kind of be the nation's breadbasket, and agriculture, especially wheat and livestock, is going to play a key role in this region. And in the South, we have the cash crop economy, and in the South, it's going to be all about cotton. You're also going to see the development of all sorts of new technology, which is going to assist in economic development, and new transportation improvements, which are going to link the country up. You're going to have a huge population increase. The population of the United States is going to dramatically increase. There's going to be a very high birth rate, but also the role of immigration, particularly from Ireland, Germany, and also England and other countries. So immigration is going to allow this American population to increase. You're going to see the growth of cities. Cities like New York and Chicago and New Orleans are going to dramatically increase their population, and with this also comes Western expansion. And Western expansion is going to bring issues into the nation, especially political issues such as slavery. And then finally, economic changes had impact on migration patterns, kind of where people went, why they went there, gender and family relations, and class relations within the country. You have a growing gap between the wealthy and the not so wealthy. Immigration is a key part of this story. If you look at the graph, especially in the 1840s, huge increase, and there's this spike in immigration during this time period. There's lots of land in America, and so people in Europe where they don't have this access to cheap land are going to be coming over. You also have jobs in the factories, especially in the North. That's why overwhelmingly the immigrant population is going to settle in northern areas. And of course, America is known for its freedom and opportunity. Even though things weren't perfect in America, they were a heck of a lot better than they were over in monarch-dominated Europe. And then really the Irish are going to come in huge numbers, especially in the mid-1840s, because of course, the event known as the Irish Potato Famine, which leads us to the Irish. In fact, the Irish are largely going to settle in cities, especially cities like Boston, New York. You're going to have these immigrants oftentimes doing the hard labor for extremely low wages. They are the kind of bulk of that labor force. The Irish are going to be the kind of big victims of a lot of prejudice and nativism, which we'll talk about in just a moment. There's this idea that amongst native-born Americans that they must be stealing jobs since they're willing to work for such low wages. There's also a strong streak of anti-Catholic feelings. Many of the Irish immigrants who came were Catholic, and there's this feeling that somehow they're going to be dictated politically by the Vatican and the Pope. And then really important is the role of immigrants, especially the Irish, in politics. They're going to largely support the Democratic Party, and in places like New York going to play a key role in the electoral process. The Tammany Hall in New York City, the political machine known as Tammany Hall, is a great example of immigrants and the role of immigrants in the vote. The German immigrants are kind of the second most largest group coming in during this time, and the German immigrants who come are a very diverse group. Germany is not a nation at this time. It's not a unified nation. There's a mix of religions. You have Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Germans. You have a wide variety of social classes, whereas the Irish tended to come over largely kind of poorer immigrants. There is all sorts of middle class Germans coming over, artisans, farmers, and so on. They're going to settle largely in the Old Northwest, buying up land and settling in farms, but also in some cities as well. And they're going to establish these German communities, like for instance, in St. Louis, very vibrant German community during this period of time. As a result of all this immigration, you're going to have the rise of nativist groups in America. The arguments kind of already went over, but this idea that they must be taking jobs from Native Americans, that they're going to influence the electoral process by outvoting native-born Americans. They're going to ruin American culture with all their weird German language and their Irish customs, and there's this feeling that they're somehow going to destroy the fabric of America. The Catholic thing, especially for the Irish, plays a key role in this rise of nativist sentiment, and you get political parties forming, such as the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner, more commonly referred to as the Know Nothing Party. And they basically wanted to restrict, and they advocated for the restrictions on immigrants and immigration. But a key thing happening during this time is America is becoming more and more ethnically and racially diverse. It's always been a nation of a lot of different people. This period, you see that furthering development. Big idea in this period is the diverging economic systems, the North, the West, the South. They're developing regional economic specializations, and very often during this time period, regional political and economic loyalties often continue to overshadow national concerns. So these regions are kind of developing distinct from one another, and they're really worried about the development of their region, not the nation as a whole. Northern manufacturing is key during the market revolution. You get a guy by the name of Samuel Slater, comes over in the 1790s. He memorized the plans for the machinery from England and smuggles those ideas over here. He is known as the father of the factoring system. He establishes Slater Mill in Rhode Island during this time. You also get people like Eli Whitney and his interchangeable parts, which allows for mass production in factories, which allows also for greater efficiency. And other inventions play a key role. Samuel Morse develops the telegraph in 1844, which is a revolution in communication. You're able to communicate much more rapidly than ever before. Factory work in the South was very difficult. This is a huge shift in the country. People are not just working as apprentices in homes, they're going to a factory, and this work is very difficult, long hours, low wages, and dangerous, completely unregulated. And you go from kind of semi-subsistence agriculture to what some refer to as wage slaves, the very kind of critical view of factory work that you are just the slave for low wages. One of the most famous examples of this factory model is in Lowell, Massachusetts, the Lowell system. And in the beginning, it is worked by New England farm daughters. They were sent to the factory. Later on, it will be Irish women, but very tightly regulated. Every aspect of life was regulated for these workers in. Another key part of the market revolution is the transportation revolution. The steamboat is invented, the first one in 1807 by Robert Fulton. This dramatically changes transportation costs because now you can go upstream and downstream for a very low price, comparatively speaking. So transportation becomes cheaper. You get the building of turnpikes and roads. The National Road, the Cumberland Road, is built in 1811, which allows goods and people to move much more efficiently. You have a huge canal boom in the 1820s and 1830s, the most famous being the Erie Canal, linking up the Great Lakes with the Hudson River. And all these different canals are being built in this 2-decade period. Unfortunately, with canals, they're very costly. It gets cold, the water freezes. So later on, you're going to get the development of the railroads, especially in the 1830s and 40s. Railroads are much faster, they're more reliable, and they're cheaper, and you're going to have an explosion of construction really in the north as well. The impact of the transportation revolution, you're going to get the development of a continental economy. Goods and people and markets are being extended, and by 1860, the country is linked up like never before. However, this does bring up new issues. Who should pay for it? The federal or state governments during the American system. Some of those traditional Democratic Republicans said, no, we will not pay. Western expansion is a key theme during this time period. Here you have in 1790 the population density, and here it is by 1830. People are moving west. This new transportation allows that to take place, but you also have new inventions, a revolution in the field. McCormick invents the McCormick Reaper in 1830, which allows crops to be gathered much more efficiently. You have John Deere inventing the steel plow in 1837, which allows farmers to break through the soil much easier. And as a result, the consequences is you have this transition to large-scale farming for profit. And with that comes a demand for more land and more machinery, which increases debt amongst farmers. Yes, they're being more efficient, but you have to pay more capital in order to become one of these big farmers. And of course, for people in the West, you're going to continually want the federal government to provide you better transportation so that you can get access to new markets. A really significant invention happens in 1793 by a guy by the name of Eli Whitney, the cotton gin. And the cotton gin just basically allows for cotton production to dramatically increase in efficiency. And the cotton gin, which separates the seed from the cotton, creates a huge demand for slaves. Slavery was kind of dying out, but the cotton gin suddenly makes cotton production way more profitable. And as a result, it's important to keep in mind this cotton, which is picked in the South by slave labor, is being sent to northern factories and British factories. They are the ones buying this raw material. Some random big ideas for these chapters. Southern cotton will be the raw material for manufacturing in the North. These economies are linked together. We oftentimes think about them in the North, no slavery, South slavery, but they are connected economically. This is going to lead to an increase in the internal slave trade. Slave trade was banned in 1808 from abroad, but slaves are going to be sold constantly, especially as the nation moves west. The transformation from a subsistence economy of tiny farms and workshops to a national network of industry and commerce is going to take place during this time period. And of course, with that, you're going to have changes in the family dynamics as women and children leave the home to work in factories.
That's all, folks.